Welcome and step into the dojo. Here with Pete and Alex. How you going, Pete?
G'day, Alex. I'm good. Good to be here in the dojo with you.
So at some point we'll get into some tussling and sparring. We're not there yet. I think we're just warming up, right?
That's right. Wouldn't be the first in a corporate workshop to get hot and bothered and, approaching fisticuffs.
I think we need those people in the room called stakeholders, isn't it?
Yeah, with their literal...
I've been on that side, so I shouldn't talk. So tonight we're going to have a chat about the value proposition canvas. So last week, or the last 2 weeks, we talked about the business model canvas, and we did this little exercise with Pete's Online Flowers. You can see here that there's two segments. That there's the value propositions, there's the customer segment, and they're really interesting because there's actually a whole nother canvas to help you flesh out those two areas, and they're really critical. Ideally, you start with that before you head here. Would you agree with that, Pete?
Yeah, absolutely. Just takes you to that next level of detail. I mean, you can start the business model canvas anywhere. Like, perhaps you're thinking about a key resource or something like that and going from there. But it's always useful to, be thinking about your customer and doing that deeper dive. As we're going to see, there's a lot more richness in the value prop canvas when it comes to thinking about the customer.
Cool. And if you're like me and you're often starting from scratch with a new proposition, or maybe from a startup perspective, then it's quite likely that you'll be starting with the value proposition canvas. You've identified a customer and you're trying to build something that solves for their pain points. And therefore you wouldn't have anything else on that business model canvas. So for me, quite often, this is my starting spot when it comes to, I've got a good idea, or I've noticed some particular challenges that customers may want resolved. This is a great go-to tool for that particular purpose. So I'm going to work my way around. I'll explain how I use it and go through the components of the value proposition canvas. And Pete will tell me where I'm wrong and correct me. Okay.
There's no right or wrong. It's just, it's going to be interesting to see.
No right or wrong.
How you use it.
Sure. So we can use the Pete's Online Flowers as an example, but I'll kind of go through these segments here. You've got this box on the left-hand side, and you have this circle on the right-hand side. And that little face there is a good indicator for you, or a good clue that this is all about the customer on the right-hand side. This is you, or it's not you as in you, but this is a person here, and that's what to keep in mind. On the left-hand side is the product or service, largely. And so that's what you're going to build. Is it a mobile app? Is it a website? Is it some sort of other service? What is it that you're building? And you've got these two arrows pointing in between, and it's a little reminder that these need to connect, these need to line up, these need to have consideration on both sides. And so, as we like to say, let's start with the customer first, and what problems are we trying to solve for them? Typically, especially in business, as in corporate, you unfortunately start off on this side, and you'll go, we need to build X, which does Y. And then afterwards, someone will come along and say, but who's it for? What problem does it solve? So always start on the right if you can. Now, on the right-hand side here, we've got customer jobs. And if you're not familiar with that terminology, Clayton Christensen was the consultant that popularized. I don't think he created it, but as a consultant, he popularized the jobs to be done methodology, where this was different to pain points. This was really about understanding, and through his definition, how do you help a customer progress the job that they're trying to achieve? Now, there's 3 dimensions to any job. There's the functional side, there's the social side, and there's an emotional side. Now, for example, that may be the functional side may be I'm going to take a physical product as an example. Here I have here. Here I have here. Here I have. Can you guess what this is?
It's like a giant cigarette or pepper grinder or pencil case. There
It's
you
a
go.
pencil case. It's a very beautiful. Let's say handcrafted, but it's very beautiful, pretty expensive, brass topped, wooden crafted pencil case. It was just a beautiful thing. It's almost like a potato masher grenade. But here we go. The functionality here is simple. It's a container a container that protects my expensive pens. That's the functional side to it. The emotional side is, for me, it's so beautiful. It's nice to hold. It feels like luxury. So I feel, for me, I feel a connection there in terms of it makes me feel like, oh, I'm worthwhile. It's good. There's the social side, which is, hey, Pete, when you see this pencil case that I've got, you'll think I'm the bomb. This does something for me. It gives me that social cred. So there's 3 dimensions to it, but ultimately this may really be to simply help me in transporting and protecting my expensive goodies. So customer jobs, the way I find them, and usually is through a customer research process. So actually talking to the customers and generally applying the 5 whys approach to really understand why do they do what they do, or what are they trying to achieve. Now, similar but different are pain points, and pain points are really, okay, great. Sorry, I should be using Pete's Online Flowers here is the example. I think for Pete's Online Flowers, the customer that we had in mind was someone that wanted to maintain a relationship with a loved one that they were buying flowers for. I'm not making this up on the spot. And in doing so, there's some pain points. Some of those pain points are that they don't know what flower to buy. They're not very well organized, and they do it last minute. Or there may be pain points around there's a cost involved that they're unfamiliar with. These are good. Write them down. So we add pain points there in terms of what would this individual find challenging when it comes to achieving the job. Now, Pete, I said I don't normally jump to the gains, but I'll explain what this is as part of this circle. So the gains are, if you help this individual achieve the job to be done, what gains will they get? How will they feel? How will it make them feel? How will it benefit them? Surely there's some positive emotion, but there may also be some functional benefits as well. So these are all things, different dimensions to consider when it comes to this individual. When you've mapped them all out, you will have no doubt about this individual. You won't say maybe this, maybe that. I think you get it to a great point where we go, well, we know this person. We know what their problem is. We know what they're trying to achieve. What's the solution? What do we do about it? So I think when I feel like this, and when I help anyone else fill it out, I want them to get to a really good place around understanding this. And even talking through it, usually they realize that they don't know enough. And then you stop, you go away, you talk to them, and you come back. And it's a pain in the butt. It takes more time, but the more assumptions you progress knowing, the more likely it is that you're going to build the wrong thing. So my recommendation is go away, talk to your customer, confirm or validate, or just get deeper understanding for that right-hand side. Anything else you want to add to that right-hand side, Pete?
Just I guess one thought, or another dimension to it is around priority. So when you're initially filling it out, it's just a matter of more like almost brainstorming, just trying to get it out of them and visualize what's there. But then there's the opportunity to do another pass and say, well, what's the most important jobs or the most important gains? And gives things a bit of shape and priority. So that's a sort of a hidden dimension there, that in practice you can pull out of the hat.
Yeah, that's a good point, because you do end up with multiple jobs and a zillion pains, and then you go, well, where do we begin? And so I think that's where it's what's the three most important pains that if you can satisfy those, you would be happy as the customer. So yeah, you're right. Some shape or form of prioritization is going to be critical. Otherwise, you're going to be building 1,000 features just to satisfy that customer. So on the left-hand side, pain relievers. So you've got pains. What features, and it may not be a digital thing, but what features or what can you offer to relieve those pains? So, for instance, with this customer in mind for Pete's Online Flowers, well, the online florist, what can you do to alleviate their lack of knowledge about flowers and what you can actually get from an online florist? So I think last time we talked about it could be a flower arrangement, it could be just a whole stack of roses, or it could be a box of chocolates, it could be a hamper. Where do I begin? And so what can we offer as part of the pain relief for that indecisiveness or lack of knowledge of options? And you may go, okay, I think as part of what we were designing last time, it was around something that offers, whether it's less options, whether it just knows what this individual wants. That's an example of what a pain reliever may be. And then for whatever you've prioritized on the right-hand side, those pains will create, or the way I've done it in the past is we'll go through one by one and look at how we methodically able to alleviate those pains. And then I'll just draw an arrow between one to the other. So whatever is listed here, I just make sure that they'll connect. And you eventually have quite a few. And I know you may have multiple things connecting. Actually, we've got a few things here that may relieve the pain for this element. But once you go through this exercise, you start formulating, actually, I can see what this is, and it's starting to come together, which is where you may go to the products and services, which is, well, we may have one or more solutions that package up these pain relievers that this customer will purchase in order to achieve the job to be done. Just above the pain relievers are the gain creators. So I always get a little bit confused between gain creators and gains, to be honest. So the gain creator side, my understanding is that this would be what are some of the other benefits as I've created this product or service or set of products and services that will be in addition to what the customer has considered over here. So there may be additional benefits that this customer will be attracted to. So this left-hand side, once you've, and to be honest, I've seen most of the effort around how do we alleviate these pains, that to be the crux of the challenge of creating the solution to this customer challenge.
Awesome. Yeah. And in my experience and observation, one challenge or pitfall is the distinction between pains and gains, and it can be very tempting once you've captured all of your pains to just invert the wording and put them in the gains. So it's pain that it's expensive. True. It's a gain if it's cheap. That's not. We're not aiming to do that. And it can be hard to avoid doing that in a way, because it's sort of logical as well that there is that mirror. But you're really looking for, in your pains, your impediments and your pain relievers, how you're addressing those. And then, as you explained, the gains, the benefits and feelings from having achieved those jobs. But sometimes, that's not going to be realized by just magic. Maybe you've got to actually incorporate something into your product or service that amplifies that or makes that apparent. So
Yep.
yeah, they're both important.
So as you can see above here, these two areas correlate with the customer segment on the right. So we know a lot about our customer now, this individual, the job to be done for them and some existing pains, and that's where it slots in. So this is the business model canvas, that's where it slots in, and this is the value proposition that we've designed, and that's where it fits in the middle. So ideally, you can see that if you can get this match right, that we understand the customer and we've designed something that will be of value to them, that achieves their job to be done, then we can populate those two parts of the business model canvas as we have here.
Yeah. Although I've got to say, in practice, I find like it's not a one-to-one mapping. Like the amount of detail that you generate on the value proposition canvas is too much to bring into the business model canvas. And also, in a sense, they're different levels of abstraction almost. Like, the customer segments here, it's more, that descriptor at the top of the value proposition canvas is what you're listing out there of who your core segments are.
Yep.
The value proposition in the background just gives you that next level of depth to be able to really understand them and demonstrate that you do. So they're really sort of complementary in that way and almost need to exist side by side, because a big anti-pattern with the business model or any of these canvases, particularly the business model canvas, is it gets so loaded up with sticky notes that you can't see the wood for the trees. Like really, the one we're looking at now has probably too much on it. You'd want to distill that down to just ideally, a few stickies per box there, so that you can really see the story and tell it without just being totally overwhelmed. And that's it's just part of the art and the challenge of it. And that's where I think the value proposition canvas is so valuable, because it lets you go to that depth.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. There's a whole nother dimension that the value prop canvas has beyond this. I think the other thing that I was thinking about. So let me just. I'm being a Miro noob today. The other side to this is, and I've done this a number of times, where as you talk through this, and I think this is really valuable, that it's not one person doing this on their own, but you talk through it with someone else, and through that discussion and articulation, you start recognizing what you understand or don't understand more so on this side. Everyone thinks they know their customer until they start explaining things and getting questioned about them. And quite often there's a cycle behind this in terms of going back to the customer and validating, and then there's another step with regards to testing your value proposition as well. And it's one thing to have your canvas out there, so the business model canvas, but then there's another step when it comes to actually, okay, we think in theory everything maps out, but in reality we need to test this concept and whether we use it, the concept of an MVP or prototyping or however you want to do it. You need to go through that iterative process to actually confirm that what you've thought was the appropriate pain reliever actually is what the individual values. And they may value it, but they may not pay for it. And so I think there's some discipline in using these tools, but recognizing that you got to revisit them. You can do beautiful mapping one day, it'll be logical and it'll make sense. But as they say, when it comes to the plan, you really need to iterate with the customer and just continually validate.
Absolutely. And how do you think about customer segments? Like how do you differentiate between them or articulate them Like, what do you put in that box at the top?
And that may just be, in this instance for Pete's Online Flowers, and maybe that the customer segment is time poor romantics who rarely purchase gifts for their loved ones. Something that sort of calls out who a general sort of persona.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's a tricky one. It's like, on one hand, I feel like it's a different concept to a marketing kind of customer segment of, males between 25 and 30. There's blah 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 blah. In a B2B context, some of the guidance that I give teams is, you kind of want to be able to look this person up on LinkedIn and find one of these people. Like, it's not a generalization. This is a actual person with a with a real career and things that they need to achieve, and real aspirations and feelings. Not that you're not designing a product for one person, but the point is that you want to really understand them and get in their shoes. So in terms of a customer segment, at least in a B2B context, really trying to be very specific about that role. In a B2C context, I think, like you said, trying to describe that person, because ideally you're doing tens of interviews, really, and there's going to be differences between different segments. So that's where I usually try and capture some additional information up there, just to see if patterns start emerging. Like, just things like, you don't need, like, what age do you guess the person to be, or their income level, or their education level. Just some of those things. It's not central to the process, but when you come back and you look at 20 customer interviews you've done, and the value proposition canvas for each of them, how they've prioritized their jobs, pains and gains, you want to be able to look for the patterns and see, it's okay, well, it's interesting. All these people that fit this particular profile seem to find these jobs important and have these similar gains, and that can help narrow in who you're designing for.
Yeah, that's a good point. It also reminds me that I guess this is the challenge when applying these tools, how deep or broad that you go depending on the environment that you're in. So, there's always timelines to work by, and within those timelines, I guess that's part of the constraint that will help you determine how much information you need to collect and how much you need to just make a call and progress on. And also depends if you're working on, if you're doing customer development from the perspective of a startup. Quite often you don't know enough, and you're doing it on the side of your day job, and so you may have minimal capacity to sort of understand the depth of that customer until you're straight into testing, and then there's a different cost because you'll need to pivot in a different way. But yeah, it really depends on the resources available to you as well.
Yeah. And then, it's then whether it's a personal preference or a judgment call or an experience thing, but like you've said, it takes a lot of time and effort to do customer interviews. I see a lot of people going towards doing surveys, which are then potentially, like you can get more bang for your buck in a way. Like, you can reach more people with lot less effort. But like you said, you lose that opportunity to draw out more insight that you can do during conversation. So I always tend to go back to interviews and developing the canvas that way. Not to say it can't be done by other means, but think it, something to think about.
Totally agree with you. I think, I mean, we've, from the interviews that I've done, what I valued most is hearing those stories from the individuals. And, you know, I've been doing a lot in healthcare, so you hear a lot of really sad stories about real pain and loss and all that sort of thing. And you can read that from a research report, you can read it from a survey, but when you hear the pain in people's voices and you hear them tell their stories directly to you, it's like you carry some of that pain away as well. And that, when it comes to like populating something like this, you really, when it comes to priority, you've got a better sense because you've talked to these individuals and a range of them, and you can start to speak on their behalf and channel them and their emotions and needs as well. You won't get that from a survey. And yes, as you said, you don't have the opportunity to ask a second or third follow-up question. So for me, I'd always default to, let's have a conversation, let's meet them, let's understand them, their lifestyles. And you know, in the space that I'm in with healthcare, you learn when you're on a call with a mum and she's in her house, and you hear the kids in the background and you hear the dog barking, and you get a real sense of lifestyle challenges, and you won't get that through the survey. So you just, the amount of information you can glean is worth the effort. Yeah, that's for sure.
Totally.
And that's a whole nother talk we should definitely do, just in terms of even at work with the teams I'm working with now. There's a lot of questions I get asked around, you know, how do you populate that right-hand side, and what questions do you even ask? Oh, we'd like to interview some customers. What do we say? What do we find out? And that's a very expansive kind of question, because you could ask anything and learn nothing, you know. So there's probably a good conversation we can have in some methodology and how we derive that insight that will be valuable to populate this.
Sounds
Cool.
good. Look forward to it.
All right. Well, thanks for that. That was good. This was like really light, and I think on another occasion we should actually populate it and have some. I need to do some prep work, and just show how we would fill it out and some of the conversations on the way. The fear that I always have with examples and not real, I guess not real examples, but things that real projects you're actually working on, is always that customer jobs. It's you can infer it, but until you've actually done the research, you don't really know. But I'm sure we can come up with something, but that'd be great to go through next time, if we can go through a real example and walk through the steps, whether it's Pete's Online or another variant.
Cool.
All right. So thanks a lot, everyone, for watching. Feels like this was short, but it's actually 30 minutes. That'd be great if people can subscribe or like and start following, and let us know if you're interested in other areas, and we'll do our best to share. Thank you.
See you later.